Hey, for the next part of this blockchain and cryptocurrency, we're going to add this new concept of the transaction miner. Now, to understand why we need the transaction miner as an object, let's cover two main questions. Now, first, what is a transaction miner? Now, you may have a good guess already, considering that we've alluded to the idea of mining transactions a few times throughout the course. But essentially, a transaction miner will do the job of mining new blocks whose data consists of a set of transactions. The transaction miner will get these transactions from the transaction pool. They're called miners because they are the individuals who pay the cost of computational power and do the work to find a valid hash for a new block. Now, the question is always, why would a miner so generously spend their CPU to find valid hashes? Well, by adding a new blockchain, or rather a new block to the blockchain, the transaction miner will receive an official mining reward from the blockchain system. This reward is going to come in the form of a special transaction. The transaction will only have a single output, which will be for the miner's wallet, with an official mining reward value. And the input is going to be a unique transaction input as well, that all the nodes are going to have the ability to recognize and validate. This mining reward helps motivate workers to keep mining new blocks to the chain. It ensures that new transactions will eventually get recorded, so long as there are motivated miners to drive the overall system. Without the mining reward incentive, the blockchain growth would stagnate. Alright, now that we've covered what the transaction miner is, let's move on to that second question. What functionality does a transaction miner need to achieve in order to properly mine a block of transactions? Well, in their list of functionality, there's going to be 5 actions a transaction miner needs to take in order to properly add a block of transactions to the chain. 1. It needs to grab all the valid transactions that are currently in the pool. Note that there's a keyword of valid in there. So right now we have just a bunch of transactions in the transaction pool, but we're going to need to add a way to distinguish the well-formed transactions from the malformed ones, since each transaction is user contributed, so we can't trust it right away. 2. It should generate the miner's reward. With a valid transaction and the official miner's reward, the miner has a list of valid transactions and the miner reward to then include within a newly mined block. Then we get to action number 3. The miner will do the work of finding a valid hash for that list of transactions. With a valid hash found, they will then add the block consisting of the transactions as the data to the blockchain. Next, action 4. With a new block created, they will broadcast their updated blockchain to the entire network. Then everyone is going to respond, validate the new chain, and replace their blockchain arrays with the now longest valid chain of blocks. Finally, action 5, in the last step, is to clear the transaction pool now that the miner has already included the transaction data in the blockchain. Note that the miner only needs to clear the pools of its own node and not all the pools on the behalf of all the other blockchain instances. This is to prevent exposing a way for the nodes to arbitrarily clear everyone else's transaction pools. So in order to make sure all the pools are cleared when a new block is mined, each blockchain instance is going to be responsible of clearing its transaction pool for any new transaction that gets included in the overall blockchain. This is all in the effort to prevent the submission of transactions that have already been included in the chain. So to make sure that this happens even more, we're going to add extra validation on top of that a transaction can't be recorded if it already exists in the blockchain history. But we're going to dive into this concept in much more detail later. For now, let's get to the task at hand and build the transaction miner class.